May 28, 1940. The Reich Air Ministry, Berlin. Reichsmarschall Hermann Göring set down the intelligence report with undisguised contempt. The document detailed President Roosevelt's request to Congress for an unprecedented expansion of American aircraft production, a capacity to manufacture 50,000 planes annually. "The Americans are desperate if they believe such propaganda will frighten us," Goring told his staff. "They know nothing of war production. Let them try to convert their automobile factories. They will learn that building warplanes requires more than assembly lines." What Goring failed to grasp was that in Detroit, a Danish immigrant named William Knudsen was already proving him wrong. The former General Motors president, now working for $1 per year as Roosevelt's production chief, was orchestrating the most ambitious industrial transformation in human history. Within 4 years, American factories would produce not the impossible 50,000 aircraft Goring dismissed, but nearly 100,000 planes annually, while simultaneously supplying 2 theaters of war across opposite oceans. The proclamation that triggered German contempt had come just 12 days earlier, on May 16th, as German panzers raced through France. Standing before Congress, Franklin Roosevelt declared, "I should like to see this nation geared up to the ability to turn out at least 50,000 planes a year." The reaction was skepticism even among allies. In 1939, America had produced just 3,611 military aircraft. The Army Air Corps possessed 1,700 combat planes, many obsolete. Yet Roosevelt demanded a 14-fold increase in production. William Knudsen became the architect of this miracle. When asked who could achieve such impossible production, presidential advisor Bernard Baruch responded, "First, Bill Knudsen. Second, Bill Knudsen. Third, Bill Knudsen." Knudsen had abandoned his $300,000 salary to serve his adopted nation, bringing automotive mass production principles to aircraft manufacturing. This was the opening move of a production war that would decide the fate of civilization. A war fought not on battlefields alone, but on factory floors, in tool and die shops, in the hands of women who had never touched a rivet gun. And across the Atlantic, the Nazi leadership remained blind, cocooned in ideology, utterly unprepared for the avalanche about to bury them. The Nazi dismissal of American industrial capability was not mere arrogance. It was a structural failure of imagination, rooted in racial ideology and reinforced by a command structure that punished bearers of unwelcome news. General Friedrich von Boeticher, the German military attaché in Washington from 1933 to 1941, sent accurate, meticulously documented reports describing the scale and speed of American industrial mobilization. His December 1940 cable warned, "American war production will reach unimaginable heights." Berlin dismissed these warnings as defeatist exaggeration. When Boeticher met Hitler in February 1939 to discuss American potential, the Führer ranted about American racial degeneracy rather than listening to intelligence assessments. Hitler proclaimed Americans half Judaized, half negrified, and incapable of sustained warfare. This ideological blindness would prove fatal. The prejudice permeated all levels of the Luftwaffe. Intelligence officers dismissed reports of women entering aircraft factories as signs of American desperation. They could not conceive that democratic mobilization might exceed totalitarian command. When reports arrived of factories running 3 shifts around the clock, German analysts assumed exaggeration. The Nazi worldview simply could not accommodate American reality. Yet reality was already taking shape. The transformation began immediately. By December 1941, even before Pearl Harbor, American factories were producing 2,000 military aircraft monthly, a 20-fold increase from 2 years earlier. The Ford Motor Company announced plans for a massive bomber plant at Willow Run, Michigan. Boeing expanded its Seattle facilities. Douglas Aircraft hired thousands of workers. The arsenal of democracy was awakening, fueled by a fusion of automotive mass production techniques with aeronautical engineering. Knudsen and his team understood something the Germans did not. Aircraft could be built like automobiles if you broke them into manageable subassemblies, standardized every component, and created moving assembly lines that brought work to the worker. This required not just capital, but a cultural shift, a willingness to treat aircraft not as bespoke creations of master craftsmen, but as products of systems engineering. The Germans, wedded to artisanal traditions and rigid hierarchies, never fully grasped the power of this approach. They optimized the individual aircraft. The Americans optimized the entire production ecosystem. And the ecosystem was about to deliver results that would rewrite the mathematics of global warfare. Ford's Willow Run plant embodied American ambition in its most audacious form. Construction began on farmland near Ypsilanti, Michigan, on April 18, 1941. When completed, it became the world's largest factory under one roof, 3.5 million square feet, with an assembly line stretching a mile from end to end. Charles Sorensen, Ford's production chief, made a promise that sounded like madness. He would build one B-24 Liberator bomber per hour, when other factories were managing barely one per day. The B-24 was a monster of complexity. 488,193 individual parts, each requiring precise fabrication and assembly. The initial results were catastrophic. The first bomber, completed in September 1942, required complete rebuilding before it could fly. Quality control failures reached 50%. By February 1943, Willow Run had produced just 56 bombers in an entire month, against promises of hundreds. Critics in Washington dubbed it Willow Run. The plant became a national embarrassment. But Ford engineers did something the Germans could not. They iterated. They broke the B-24's overwhelming parts count into logical subassemblies. They developed hydraulic riveting tools that multiplied the speed of fastening. They prefabricated wiring harnesses on jigs, reducing installation time from days to hours. They introduced moving assembly lines where fuselage sections advanced continuously, workers performing specialized tasks at fixed stations. They accommodated 578 design changes in 1943 alone, while maintaining production flow. German factories, by contrast, froze designs and struggled to incorporate modifications. The Willow Run team learned from every failure. By September 1943, monthly production reached 148 bombers. By December, 365. The shattering breakthrough came in April 1944, when Willow Run produced 428 B-24s, one every 63 minutes, 24 hours a day. This single factory was outproducing the entire German aviation industry. The mathematical horror for the Luftwaffe was just beginning to unfold. German pilots were the first to sense the shift, long before their high command acknowledged it. During the Tunisia campaign in late 1942, Major Johannes Steinhoff, commanding Jagdgeschwader 77, noted in his combat diary, "The American pilots are no longer amateurs. Most disturbing, there are more of them every day." The revelation accelerated through 1943. On January 27th, the 8th Air Force mounted its first raid on Germany itself. 64 bombers attacking Wilhelmshaven. It was a pinprick compared to what was coming. On October 14th, the second raid on Schweinfurt, Black Thursday, saw 60 B-17s lost, over 600 airmen killed or captured. The Luftwaffe celebrated a tactical victory. Then came the strategic reckoning. Within 2 weeks, the Americans had replaced every lost bomber and every lost crew, and returned with even larger formations. The Germans could not replace their lost pilots, could not replace their damaged fighters fast enough, could not sustain the attritional mathematics. The production line had become a weapon more decisive than any fighter squadron. During Big Week, February 20th through 25th, 1944, the 8th and 15th Air Forces mounted 3,500 bomber sorties against German aircraft production centers. The Luftwaffe lost between 262 and 355 fighters, but far more critically, it lost approximately 100 irreplaceable veteran pilots. General Adolf Galland reported to Goring that Germany was losing 1,200 fighters monthly while producing only 1,000. America was producing 2,500 fighters monthly, while losing 400. The exchange rate had become a death sentence. Major Heinz Bahr, one of Germany's top aces with 220 victories, described a January 1944 mission over Brunswick. The bomber stream stretched from horizon to horizon. At least 700 flying fortresses and liberators. We were 8 fighters against hundreds. It was hopeless. The production differential had metastasized into tactical impossibility. Every German pilot who bailed out was a catastrophic loss. Every American pilot who bailed out was a telegram home and a replacement already in the pipeline. The Luftwaffe was not being outfought. It was being outproduced, outnumbered, outlasted. And the man who had dismissed American production was about to watch his entire air force consumed by the machine he had mocked. As American production soared beyond all rational expectation, Germany retreated into a grotesque industrial fantasy. In February 1944, Goring authorized the Jägerstab, the fighter staff, to disperse aircraft production into 729 underground facilities, using concentration camp labor under conditions of unspeakable brutality. The Mittelwerk complex, carved into the Harz Mountains, employed 60,000 prisoners. 20,000 perished from starvation, disease, and systematic abuse. These underground factories were supposed to produce invulnerable armament. Instead, they produced more defects than aircraft. Slave laborers sabotaged components with extraordinary ingenuity. Loose rivets hidden beneath paint, wiring that would short after a few flight hours, fuel lines that leaked under pressure. Transportation between dispersed facilities created endless delays. Quality control collapsed entirely. The entire Mittelwerk complex produced fewer engines monthly than Ford's single plant in Chicago. Meanwhile, American innovation was accelerating. Boeing developed modular construction for the B-29 Superfortress across 4 separate facilities, achieving completely interchangeable parts, a feat Germany never approached. The pressurized, remote-controlled gun-equipped B-29, costing $639,000 per aircraft, incorporated technological sophistication that Germany could not match even in prototypes. By early 1945, America was producing 100 B-29s monthly, each capable of carrying 10 tons of bombs 2,000 miles. The production numbers for 1944 alone remain staggering. American factories produced 96,270 aircraft in that single year, 16,000 4-engine bombers, 35,000 fighters, 22,000 multi-engine aircraft. This single year's production exceeded Germany's entire wartime output of approximately 94,677 aircraft. Beyond the airframes lay an even deeper industrial chasm. Each American bomber carried 13 50-caliber machine guns with thousands of rounds. German fighters increasingly launched with partial ammunition loads. American bombers featured powered turrets, advanced Norden bomb sights, and sophisticated navigation electronics. German fighters often lacked functioning radios. Boeing's Seattle Plant 2 was producing 16 B-17s daily by May 1944. North American aviation churned out 500 P-51 Mustangs monthly. Lockheed achieved production of 1 P-38 Lightning every 90 minutes, while implementing 2,127 combat-driven modifications without stopping the line. Supporting industries matched this pace. General Motors produced 57,658 aircraft engines under license. Packard built 55,523 Rolls-Royce Merlins. Alcoa's aluminum output increased 600%. Dow Chemical's magnesium production grew from 6 million to 333 million pounds annually. This was not merely quantitative superiority. It was systemic, qualitative, and self-reinforcing. Nowhere was the production war's human dimension more decisive than in the transformation of the American workforce. Women, comprising less than 1% of aircraft workers in 1941, represented 65% by 1943, 310,000 women building bombers and fighters. At Douglas Aircraft's Long Beach plant, 22,338 of 41,662 employees were women. Roswell Monroe, the original Rosie the Riveter, drove 3,000 rivets per shift at Willow Run with 99.5% accuracy. Women inspectors at Douglas reduced defect rates from 3.2% to 0.3%. Ford redesigned tools for smaller hands, inadvertently improving overall efficiency. Lighter pneumatic tools reduced fatigue across the workforce, while better-positioned workstations decreased injuries for all workers. German intelligence interpreted female employment as desperation, a sign that America had run out of men. A captured Luftwaffe report dismissed these workers as temporary, predicting imminent quality collapse. Instead, precision improved. Women excelled at detailed work. Wiring harnesses, instrument calibration, final inspection. Their integration represented not weakness, but democratic strength. A society drawing on its entire population, not merely half. African Americans, Mexican Americans, Native Americans, disabled workers, and teenagers all flooded into aircraft plants. 2 million Americans worked in aircraft production at peak. This was voluntary mobilization, not coercion. The workers purchased war bonds by the tens of millions, financing the very factories they staffed. At Willow Run alone, workers bought $45 million in bonds. The contrast with German slave labor could not have been starker. Productivity per German worker actually declined after 1943 as sabotage and despair took hold. American productivity increased 300% over the same period. Democratic cooperation had achieved what totalitarian command could not. On June 6, 1944, the culmination of the production war manifested over the beaches of Normandy. The invasion employed 11,590 Allied aircraft against 319 German sorties, a 36-to-1 superiority. This was not tactical advantage. It was industrial annihilation. Between January and May, preparatory bombing had dropped 145,000 tons on German targets, exceeding all German bombing of Britain throughout the entire war. Transport aircraft delivered 3 airborne divisions in a single day, using more planes than Germany's entire transport fleet ever possessed. By December 1944, single 8th Air Force raids involved 1,200 bombers escorted by 900 fighters, P-51 Mustangs with range to reach Poland, performance to match any German fighter, and existence in quantities that made losses strategically irrelevant. German pilots called them the Indians, swarming everywhere simultaneously. The numbers had become grotesque. America alone was producing more military aircraft than the rest of the world combined, Axis and Allied. Germany faced not defeat, but obliteration by material. Even the Nazi leadership, in private, acknowledged the catastrophe. In December 1944, Joseph Goebbels wrote in his diary, "Goring's promises about Luftwaffe superiority now seem criminal delusions. We fight the world's greatest industrial power with rhetoric." Field Marshal Erwin Rommel told his staff before D-Day, "The Americans can lose 10 tanks for every one we destroy and still overwhelm us. When they land, they will come with such material superiority that no position can hold." And Hitler himself, in a January 1945 conversation with Albert Speer, admitted, "We should have listened to Boetticher's reports. Their industrial potential was decisive. While we built hundreds, they built tens of thousands." Speer later testified at Nuremberg that American strategic bombing, made possible only by the production miracle, reduced German output by 35% for tanks, 31% for aircraft, and 42% for trucks. The American attacks, Speer stated, which followed a definite system of assault on industrial targets, caused the breakdown of German armaments that Germany's one genuine technological marvel, the Messerschmitt Me-262 jet fighter, epitomized the futility of quality without quantity. Operational in mid-1944, it was 100 miles per hour faster than any Allied fighter. Hitler and Goring believed this wonder weapon could restore air superiority despite numerical inferiority. But Germany produced just 1,430 Me-262s total, with never more than 200 operational at any moment. Its Jumo engines required overhaul after a mere 10 flight hours. Critical alloys like chromium and nickel were unavailable, forcing inferior substitutions that caused catastrophic turbine failures. America, meanwhile, had begun jet development in 1942. The Bell P-59 Aerocomet proved inferior to German jets, but Lockheed's P-80 Shooting Star, superior to the Me-262 in every metric, entered production before war's end. American industrial depth allowed simultaneous pursuit of multiple advanced technologies, a luxury Germany could never afford. The production lines that built Mustangs by the thousands also incubated the jet age. The contrast was absolute. Germany's technological edge in jets meant nothing against America's ability to produce thousands of conventional fighters while simultaneously developing next-generation aircraft and deploying them to squadrons. Quality without quantity, unsupported by a deep production ecosystem, proved worthless in total war. Hermann Göring's arrest on May 8, 1945, by elements of the U.S. 36th Infantry Division began his forced confrontation with a reality he had spent 5 years denying. Initially defiant at the interrogation facility in Augsburg, he maintained that German technology had been superior, overcome only by brute numbers. But his subsequent transfer to Camp Ashcan in Luxembourg brought intensive interrogation. In July 1945, Major Kenneth Heckler conducted extensive interviews that documented Göring's evolving and horrified recognition. "I knew American industrial potential was great," Göring admitted, "but the execution exceeded my worst fears. That single factory at Willow Run produced more aircraft than our entire bomber force at peak. It was incomprehensible." He expressed particular astonishment at American logistics. "Your ability to supply forces across 2 oceans while maintaining domestic production. This was beyond our conception. We could not adequately supply forces 500 miles from Germany. You supplied armies 5,000 miles from America." During his trial at Nuremberg, prosecutors presented charts showing America producing more aircraft monthly by 1944 than Germany managed annually. Films of Willow Run's assembly lines played while prosecutors listed German cities destroyed by bombers from that single factory. Göring's March 14, 1946, testimony revealed a mind struggling to process a scale of production that simply should not have been possible. "I believe the economic and technical potential of the United States to be unusually great, but I never imagined they could increase aircraft production 100-fold in 4 years. Such growth seemed physically impossible." Prison psychologist Gustav Gilbert documented Göring's growing obsession with production statistics. He repeatedly calculated ratios, comparing single American factories to entire German output. He seemed particularly fixated on Willow Run, calling it that damned factory that broke our backs. When shown that America had produced 812,615 aircraft engines versus Germany's 241,675, Göring simply stared at the figures in silence. The mathematical reality of defeat was finally, utterly, undeniable that on October 15, 1946, hours before his scheduled execution, Hermann Göring wrote his final letter. In it, he made his most complete admission: the Americans won through industrial power, not military prowess. We were not defeated by better soldiers, but by better factories. The nation we dismissed as capable only of building consumer goods buried the Wehrmacht under aluminum and steel. His last recorded statement to Gilbert was equally revealing. "We declared war on an industrial giant while it slept. When it awoke, we were doomed. They didn't just outproduce us, they revolutionized production itself. Every aspect of their system proved superior to ours." That night, Göring committed suicide by cyanide. But his final testimony stands as history's definitive verdict on the production war. The Reichsmarschall who had dismissed American capabilities died, knowing a single American factory had exceeded his entire Air Force's lifetime production. The transformation from 3,600 aircraft in 1940 to 295,959 by war's end, 97,810 bombers, 99,465 fighters, 98,684 other aircraft, represents the most extraordinary industrial mobilization in human history. And the real victory lay not merely in numbers, but in method. Free workers outproduced slaves. Democratic cooperation exceeded totalitarian command. A nation of immigrants and diverse citizens united to achieve the impossible. The B-24 bombers rolling off Willow Run's assembly line every 63 minutes were not just weapons. They were democracy's answer to tyranny. Each rivet driven by a woman who had been a housewife months earlier. Each engine built by a teenager who had left high school to serve. Each wing assembled by workers who had fled poverty and discrimination. The production miracle did not end with victory. It launched the American century. The engineers who designed bomber assembly lines would design the Saturn V rocket. The women who riveted B-24s would raise children who walked on the moon. Statistical quality control, pioneered to ensure bomber reliability, became global industrial practice. The infrastructure built for war, aluminum smelters, magnesium plants, machine tool factories, became the foundation for post-war prosperity. Personal income doubled between 1940 and 1945. Unemployment vanished. The arsenal of democracy had not bankrupted the nation. It had unleashed the greatest economic expansion in history. Germany's fatal miscalculation echoes across the decades. Hermann Göring laughed at the idea of America producing 50,000 planes annually. America responded by producing twice that many, then kept going, and in doing so transformed the global order. His contempt for democratic industrial capacity cost Germany the war, cost millions of lives, and stands as history's most catastrophic strategic blindness. The production lines proved as decisive as any battlefield, the assembly workers as crucial as any soldiers, the industrial mobilization as determinative as any military strategy. The Reich that dismissed the arsenal of democracy was buried beneath it. Could any tactical genius, any battlefield brilliance, have overcome a production disparity that, at its peak, saw one American factory outproducing an entire continent's aviation industry? The answer is written in the ruins of the Third Reich, in the silent factories of the Middle Work, and in the roar of a mile-long assembly line in Michigan that never stopped. A line that every 63 minutes sent another loaded bomber into the sky. Another rivet-driven argument against tyranny. Another proof that free peoples, when aroused, can bury any enemy under an avalanche of production.